There's a thin patch of forest that lines the concrete walking trail at the southwest end of one of Bloomington's dearest parks. A scrawny old pine tree that sits behind a couple of fallen fence posts caught my eye when I was at the park with a friend. It was our tradition to walk to Bryan Park on Saturday mornings, or early afternoons, and practice our hula hooping. Melody would even bring her dog to be our audience. Soon we became bored of our usual spot in the dewy grass of the field, and that's when the old tree caught our attention. One day, we had been walking down that concrete trail near Henderson Street, between the soccer field and the playgrounds that rested on the southern end of the park, and that's when we noticed it. It was a pine tree, skinny trunk and long frail branches. It's perfect for climbing. We'd given it a test climb to be sure, and it held up pretty well. We told Peter about the tree. He's one of our other close friends in our little friend triangle. This soon became what we called the meeting tree. We would all meet up at the red bench placed in the main playground. It was near to, but not hidden, unlike the tree in its little tiny corner of the park. Once we arrived, Melody and I from walking and Peter from riding his pennyboard, we'd all walk back to the tree together. Still crazy how we found it. Just a little tiny oasis hidden behind some overgrown tree branches and that collapsed fence. But it was our oasis. I almost felt like a criminal, climbing over that fence and rushing up the tree. It felt like I was running away from something, which I guess we kind of were, but, we were just kids in middle school. We didn't have a lot to worry about back then, but it was still euphoric to get to go to this place and just embrace nature. Most of our time spent in the tree was just talking about music, like who our new favorite artist was. It changed every week. Music plays a big part in each of our lives. Peter was in a couple of bands, I would occasionally perform at school events, and Melody would write her own songs. Music defined us then, and I would say it still does now. Melody and I even still exchange unheard of artists that we find. We've even created Spotify playlists for each other. Occasionally we would bring our own instruments, ukuleles, a guitar, sometimes a cajon, a little wooden box with which you drum. Our favorite song to play was Dirty Paws by Of Monsters and Men. Well, it was more like Peter's favorite song. He had made us play it so often we'd roll our eyes anytime he suggested it. It's like muscle memory in my fingers now whenever I start to play it. I don't even have to think about it. It was obviously hard to carry instruments up into the tree, so we'd play at the base of the trunk. But when we were not playing, we'd be climbing all over that tree. From all that climbing we did, we learned that sap is sticky. There was pretty much no way in nature, or at least with the resources around us, to get that darn sap off our fingers. Since we were usually bringing snacks to eat, we always had water on us. However, that never worked. It was almost as if it made it worse, like intensifying the sticky goop. I realized that one day, alcohol swabs did work, after finding one in the bottom of my bag. Since I'm a type 1 diabetic, I have a plethora of alcohol swabs at home, so I set aside a whole stash of them just for our meeting tree visits. I periodically would bring my homemade specialty strawberry fudge. Well, it was my mom's recipe, but she made it only during Christmas, so I would make it Friday nights and bring it in the next day to our meetings. It was Melody's favorite. I often made double batches just to have some at home too. Peter wasn't as much of a fan of the sweets as he was for skating. He taught me how to longboard here. It was something I never really cared for and truthfully still don't, but it's a memory I would fail to forget. The vulnerability of learning something completely new and scary, it really got my adrenaline pumping. I was determined not to give up out of dismay. I would hold tight to the fence as we rode up and down the concrete sidewalk, which occasionally would curse me with those thin splinters. But as I graduated from using the fence as a brace, we would ride in the empty basketball courts nearby, whilst Melody would serenade us with Hawaiian tunes on her ukulele. This was my Neverland. This was the place I went to forget about all the worries in the world, like growing up, going to college, getting a job. We were just kids climbing a tree and making music.